Huff, I'm going to remind Colorado fans to make sure that they have their roster ready to go, because you're going to see a lot of new faces. But from your standpoint, who are some names that you have your eye on for Coach Prime's debut? I guess ish.
Well, yeah, debut-ish. It's his first spring game. I mean, this is probably going to be the biggest collection of Colorado fans in a stadium in a number of years, not just for a spring game, but for a game period. And, Deion's had the video series following him around. He's had the cameras, but now all eyes will be on him and his team. We've seen the viral videos from Travis Hunter during the spring football practices. So now he's got this chance to present not just to the fans, but more importantly to the recruits. So when a Dylan Stewart's coming into town, when a Williams Nwaneri is coming into town, Aaron Butler, a former USC commit from Southern California, goes on his official visit. Those are big opportunities for Deion to have a packed out stadium at a spring game, a lot of buzz around this game, but you want a good product. You want people to be excited. You don't want people to sit back and say, oh, the same old Colorado team we've seen the last couple of years. You want there to be a buzz if you're Prime, because you spent 4 months building that buzz. Now you have that opportunity to take it into the offseason with as much buzz as one program could have, and this is exactly why they brought Deion in, to make that buzz return to Boulder.
Huff, there's so much hype around this game, and I think there's so much anticipation about what Colorado could look like. We've seen the behind the scenes video. They do a tremendous job on social media selling this program as well, but we don't want Lane Kiffin throwing out flame emojis when it's a 7-7 score at the end of this game, right? And I think recruits also want to see some excitement. So how important is it for them to perform well and to, I think, continue to build that hype?
Well, I think it's important because you want there to be a little bit of scoring. Maybe you manipulate the scoring a little bit. I think it was Pat Narduzzi at Pitt. They got a certain amount of points if you got a pick six or fumble recovery. Maybe Prime needs to do that. Maybe he needs to add some more points so you have an old school WAC style shootout score of 55-48. You don't want it to be 3-3 and your offense isn't moving the ball. Maybe it says something about your defense, but you want there to be scoring in spring football. You want there to be excitement, like, hey man, this offense, which was running a prevent offense the last few years, has some life. Shedeur Sanders and the Colorado offense is showing some signs of life, so you want there to be buzz. But at the end of the day, the real results are going to be counted come September, not what happens in April. 45,000, 50,000 people in Folsom Field on Saturday, that right there is the story, because there was an apathy there under Carl Durrell. It looked like he was picking up under Mel Tucker, and then he leaves after a year, the pandemic hits, and nobody's at the games, and then there was no excitement that was there the last few years. So just having this many people coming to the spring game is a victory in itself. If you can get out of there with a little bit of points on the board, this entire summer is going to be all about Coach Prime and Colorado.
Oh yeah, sold out spring game in Boulder. That has never happened before. We have a few more things that we want to get to, but before, I got to ask about this recruit that we, of course, talked about at the beginning of this show. That's Braden Platt, the linebacker out of Washington. What's on the horizon for his visits coming up?
So he's got it. Yeah, he's actually going down to Eugene this weekend. He's one of the elite throwers in the country from a track and field standpoint. Was the state champion of the shot put last year, a 60-plus shot putter. So he's going to the Oregon Relays this weekend. Just so happens to be that he'll be in Eugene. We'll be able to take an unofficial visit. Also joining him, Gatlin Bear, the #1 player in Idaho, a war daddy for the Northwest region. So two of the top players in the country who have put Oregon in their finalist list in the last 5 days will both be in Boulder. Braden Platt will be in Eugene. Braden Platt will be there this weekend. He's got his first official visit lined up for UCLA the first week in May. He's probably also going to visit Texas A&M for an official. He just got back from Michigan. I was out there during spring break. I anticipate that they'll get an official visit. USC's in there, Oklahoma, where he also took an unofficial visit. Expects to get him. Notre Dame and Texas A&M are some of the other schools, but Braden Platt's got a top 8 schools right now, but only 5 are going to get an official visit, and UCLA got that very first precious one lined up to get him in that weekend in May.
All right, let's talk more about these spring games. Kalen DeBoer leading the Huskies in their game. Things have been pretty quiet, though, for Washington on the trail. Only 2 commitments so far. We just talked about Minnesota with 11. So why do you think things have been so slow to start for them?
Well, I think there's twofold. One is they got a lot of excitement on signing day, if you remember here on this show. Austin Mack announced his commitment to the Huskies. Well, 2 weeks after he announced his commitment to the Huskies, he announced he was reclassifying to the 2023 class. Had they gotten his commitment and he stayed in the 2024 class, there would be a lot of buzz because he was a top 10 quarterback nationally, a top 100 player. Now he goes to the 2023 class. Incidentally, he'll be in Seattle this weekend for his official visit because he reclassified after the dead period, or during the dead period. He's going to take that official visit this weekend. But I think Washington has also shown that they want to go into the transfer portal. So they might have a little bit more buzz. They lost a player into the portal this week in Savell Smalls, a former composite 5-star that 24/7 had as a 4-star. He went into the portal, but I also think Washington is going to recruit the portal hard and maybe a little bit more picky on the high schoolers that they bring in. So I think there's kind of a method to the madness, but with a number of recruits expected to come in this weekend, and then Washington having one of the biggest visit weekends already set for the last weekend in June, I think June and July is going to be a lot more exciting for Husky fans. But this weekend, Austin Mack comes to town. The number one player in Northern California in 2024, Jericho Johnson, will be there. And the number one player in Northern California for 2025, Caleb Edwards, will also be in Seattle.
Yeah, a fun atmosphere could go a long way towards helping the Huskies this weekend. Hashtag sailgating, Huff. If you know, you know. But obviously, you mentioned a couple of those names, right? You mentioned some guys that Washington is in on that they are making priorities early on in this cycle. Who else do you have your eyes on that will be making it up to Seattle this weekend?
Well, I think with the Jericho Johnson visit, that's big because he's going to Oregon at the end of the week. He's going on Friday, but the Huskies have a chance to flash like they did at the Michigan State game when Jericho Johnson came on an unofficial visit. Now it's going to be a little bit different of an environment. You and I were both there in Husky Stadium that day where it was a spectacular weekend weather-wise. He just got back from Georgia and Miami, two schools that, like to sell the glitz and glamour. One's got the 2 national championships most recently. The other, Miami, is all about flash and dash. Now he comes to Washington after going to Oregon. So the Huskies are going to continue to prioritize him. They were one of the first big offers. I think they were his first Power 5 offer way back in June. Since then, he's blown up as a recruit. The Huskies will get him back on campus this weekend. That's significant. Caleb Edwards, who they also offered last summer, he's going to be there. Then they got a couple local kids. EJ Kaminon, who's their commit in the 2024 class out of Garfield High School. Kyan McDonald, a 4-star safety out of O'Dea High School in Seattle, will also be there. And then more importantly, in the 2025 class from Southern California, the number 2 and the number 3 player in the Southland, Darius Dixon out of Mater Dei, Dejon Lee out of Mission Viejo, both top 50 players nationally. They too will be on campus this weekend for the Huskies. So an opportunity for the Huskies to impress 2 of the best players in Northern California and then 2 of the best players in Southern California in the 2025 class. This is what Washington is really targeted under Kalen DeVore and really with Courtney Morgan as the director of player personnel, really making an emphasis in the state of California, and they'll have that chance this weekend.
All right, Huff, we got one more question for you, but before I get there, I just noticed we are 8 likes away from 50, so go ahead and hit that like button. Would love to reach that milestone during the show. Also, I like this interview. If I could hit, I've already hit the like button. If I could hit it again, I would. But let's finish here with Oregon State. It's a team that we don't talk about a whole lot, but it's a big weekend in Corvallis. Got a spring game and junior day, 2 birds, 1 stone, coming off one of their best cycles ever back in 2023. So what have you noticed just about the excitement among recruits that are heading up to Oregon State?
Jonathan Smith's kind of made a living on getting recruits like Jonathan Smith, guys that were a little bit off the grid, under the radar, and then just doing a great job developing them while they're in Corvallis. Well, now, coming off landing Aiden Childs in 2023, the buzz of getting DJ Uyunglele to come in as a transfer, there's a lot of just excitement around the Oregon State program coming off a 10-win season. Yes, they're still overshadowed in state by Oregon, who they beat last year. Yes, they're still overshadowed in the Pac-12 North by Washington, who they lost in heartbreaking fashion down the stretch. But there's a lot of buzz at Oregon State. So you look at their visit weekend, there is a reason to be excited. You've got 2 of the top 3 players in 2025 in Washington, a place and a state where Jonathan Smith has done a great job recruiting since he got there. Given his time as the Washington offense coordinator, Tiandre Waverly, who's a top 30 player nationally, the number 2 athlete in the country, Jonathan Epperson, who's the number 1 player in the state composite-wise, a top 10 athlete, a top 247 member himself. You've got Ansu Sano, who's probably the top in-state target in 2026 for Oregon State, and then Baron Naoni, who started on both sides of the ball for Westland Oregon High School, the state champions at the 6A division. He's a 2-way standout, the number 2 player in the state. So they're getting some key in-state players to come. They're getting some key players from Washington to come. They're getting players from Texas to come up. Guys from California like Tyrone Jackson out of Archbishop Reardon in San Francisco. Jonathan Smith, the secret is out, folks. The guy can coach, and now he's shown that he can recruit too.